What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Pro v Pro. Coming off one of the best golf tournaments, at least of this season, maybe even over the last few seasons. The Players' Championship was incredible. Justin, how much fun was that?
Dude, it was such a good golf course. Though, if they could get those greens firm, do you think that it would bring the field closer together or even spread it out more? Because we definitely saw the best players in the world rise to the top because of the conditions.
Yeah, that's such a good question because usually I always lean to the side of the more difficult it is, the easier it's going to be for the best players to separate. But some of those shots, like coming down the stretch, Xander and Wyndham Clark hitting the tee shots they hit on 17, getting it close like that, that's not doable with firmer greens. And it's not like the rest of the field was taking on that pin because it's still an incredibly difficult shot. So yeah, Sawgrass is such a unique test that I think that's a really good call out that for once, this actually maybe made it easier for the best to separate.
Yeah, and I'm kind of stuck because, I want this place to play hard and I want the scores to be lower. So it's hard for me to get behind the 20 under winning score. But I think maybe the players are just that good. But I think it also goes to the point of what we've said forever. If we want these players now to struggle with how good they are, you simply have to make the greens firmer. That doesn't matter if it's coming from the fairway, the rough, whatever. Obviously, there's a difference. But if we want a 10 under, an 8 under score to win, we have to have firm greens and we have to have some wind, which we had not very much of.
Yeah, nothing you can do about the wind. But I think there's also a key point, which is usually if the winning score is around 20 under, it means the cut's going to be like -3, -4. It means bad scores on the day are even par, something like that. We were still getting some pretty hefty over par scores. Keith Mitchell, somebody that I needed to play better than he did, was one of those guys. So it's a magnificent golf course in large part because the difference between being on your game and off your game is like consistently you're staring bogey or double bogey in the face versus you're making a lot of birdies. And that's, again, what makes the golf course so spectacular.
Yeah, and I mean, 30 holes in a row without a bogey to come back and win from Scheffler is just amazing. Like, it's just, I mean, one miss inside 5 feet. I think that, obviously now it's easy to say, but we made the right call coming back to him with the one and done to get back in contention, just because for where we messed up the previous week on the putting change and how much that meant and how good he really is hitting the golf ball. I mean, hell, he wasn't even 100% and still was just unbelievable. So, man, yeah, Scheffler, maybe, are we talking about like 2000s Tiger Woods here? Like who's better?
Data Golf did a really cool visual where they kind of showed like the separation between the number one player in the world and number two at all given times. And I think the far better comparison right now is the best that Rory had gotten to. I can't remember what time it was. I'd have to look at it. It might have been like 2018 through 2020 or something like that. But Rory had a stretch where he was as dominant as Scottie is now. And then you look back and Tiger was just in a whole different universe. So I definitely understand the inclination to say, hey, is this the best we've seen since Tiger? But even if it is the best we've seen since Tiger, it's not even close to the peaks that Tiger reached.
Well, yeah, and the other thing is Tiger did it for such a long period of time. I mean, everybody's like, well, look, Scheffler's done it for a long period of time. It's not the dominance that was Tiger Woods. So I definitely tend to agree with you that's just people trying to have a conversation. Now, that being said, there's nobody in the world right now that's on his level. I mean, Rahm, Rory, any of those guys, I just don't see it. I mean, right now, I hate to say this because of the way that he continues to act, but Wyndham Clark might be who I want in my corner down the stretch in any big moment.
He's got stones. I think the coolest thing about Wyndham doing this is that he's one of the guys where like you can't point to a single part of his game as being the reason why he dominates. Like with Scottie, you can of course point to the driving, you can of course point to the approach play. When Rory was at his best, it's the power and accuracy combination off the tee. We can usually point to something. Wyndham doesn't have that one skill set that's so much greater than everything else. he's got the speed, so maybe you could say it's the distance, maybe you could say it's the putter. But I think what's cool is sometimes when he contends, it's because for that week he was the best iron player. The next time it's because he's being a magician around the greens. The next it's he's making all the putts, and the next he's just driving it better than anybody else. It's a really cool combination. And I think it gets to why he's been able to contend as often as he has, because he's not relying on just one skill set being elite.
Yeah, so the guy that I'm staying with out here while I'm doing this turf job that I'll play some golf with, he plays with Wyndham Clark quite a bit in the Phoenix area, and he said that we talk so much about the Scheffler putting changes, right? The lengthening and going to a mallet. Well, Clark did a similar thing not long ago where he went to a putter without a top line and switched to left hand low. We didn't even talk about it. Like nobody mentioned it. And obviously, went out and had like maybe the best putting performance ever at Pebble right after he changed. Yeah. So there's a lot of times that, we don't focus on some of these guys and then they show up and we're like, well, maybe this putting change was what he needed to get going. I just wish he would be less tone deaf. That's about it. I mean, it was weird because I was watching, with my oldest son and I was just like, I want to root for him, but I just can't root for him. Like it's just a weird deal because it seems like he should be somebody that I want to root for.
Yeah, for those who haven't heard the tone deaf reference, there is the fact that he was basically talking about making the tour like more exclusive, harder to reach the pinnacle of the sport, if you will. Basically, not recognizing in what he said that if what he was advocating for now was in existence over the last 5 years, he's probably not playing in this event. He's probably not playing in the elevated events. He wouldn't have had that chance to take the leap in his career and in his play that he's taken. But the interesting thing with Wyndham is like he's gotten hate for a lot of comments, and they basically fit into two categories. The one, tone deaf, which I agree with. I don't like that from him. And then these like borderline cocky comments that I don't know. I'm kind of drawn to them with the idea that you and I know what it takes to succeed in golf and how much self-belief you have to have. I like hearing that he has that.
Yeah. He made one other comment that was really bad. He made a comment about how much he hates how much his caddy is making. I can't handle those comments. Like, He's like, I wish I could just pay him a flat salary. I would like to go back and find that clip. If I can, I'll send it to you. But he like Tiger
Matt
put his
Matt Kuchar-esque.
Yeah, but I mean Tiger put his caddy on salary, but he didn't talk about it. He's like, here, I'm gonna give you no matter, and Tiger did it the opposite way, like quiet behind the scenes, like, hey, I'm gonna put you on salary and then give you a bonus. Like if that's the direction you want to go with your business and you believe in yourself that your caddy will make that much money anyway, and that's what your caddy wants to do, then do it. But you don't need to say, oh, my caddy's making too much money.
Yeah, that's awful. I haven't heard that one. That would definitely go in the bad category.
And then the only other thing that I really want to recap about this, everybody's talking about X and how much he choked and all this, and it's just an unbelievably bad take.
Yeah,
he shot 2 under in the final round of the Players to finish second. He didn't shoot 75. He didn't hit bad golf shots. He missed a couple of very makeable putts down the stretch. Even his tee shot on 18, very unlucky. Loved everything about it. Just ran out too much, a little bit too much adrenaline. The people that are saying that why can't he finish? Why can't he get it done? He played good. He just got beat. It's not like he choked it off or anything like that. So I think it's such a horrible take. All these people say that. That he can't finish. He just didn't win. I don't think it had anything to do with where he was on the leaderboard of how he played. It just, the ball didn't go in. It's golf. And listen, if everybody else wants to leave him, I'll back him anytime. Like, now if he starts shooting 75s, we're in a different spot. But that's not what he did.
Data Golf has a really cool tool. They call it their pressure tool, where basically they look at where a guy was positioned before all of his final rounds, and then they compare that to how he's actually played. And there's a curve, and so you can see like what is expected of the guy, how well has he played. And Schauffele has a little bit of what Tony Finau used to have, which is it looks like he just runs really bad in the final round, where when he plays well, somebody else just plays better. He actually plays over expectation, whether he's first, 5th, 10th, 20th going into the final round. He's a really good 4th-round player. There are also some other good numbers to back this up. They have him with 6.99 expected wins. When you just sum up all the positions he's been in before the rounds, guess what? He's got 7 wins in those times. So 6.99 versus 7. He's doing exactly what he should do in the final round. He's just been a little bit unlucky on the biggest stages where someone else goes nuclear. You really can't fault him for that. So I love the fact that you're on this side because it bothers me too. But on the other hand, maybe it shouldn't bother us because it means that people are going to shy away from Xander, whether it's on DraftKings, whether it's in the betting market, thinking he just quote unquote can't get it done when we both know that he can.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, Scottie Scheffler right now is just a buzzsaw. If you can beat him, more power to you. But I mean, he's playing unbelievable golf, and everybody wants to say that Scheffler lost that tournament. I would say that Scottie won that golf tournament. Yeah. It's not the same.
When would you say that he won it? Like, obviously, you shoot 8 under in the final round. You're winning it throughout the round, but personally, I'd go back to Saturday and say those final 3 holes, the birdie, birdie, birdie finish is what did it for him.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of easy to say, but he missed his only putt inside 5 feet for birdie was on the par 3, 13 or 15, right? So 13, right? And then and then he hit a couple of other iron shots, especially 18, that he thought were going to be a lot closer. And then, not holding those putts that, man, I mean, you without even blinking an eye, that's a 3-shot victory instead of a 1-shot victory. So, I mean, yes, obviously those are 3 huge putts to get to finish the 3rd round. But I just think that overall, he didn't overdo anything. Like, he played that good that he could have easily won by 3, even after a less than average start, I would call it, for him.
Yeah, except for the fact that he holed out on number 4. So, like, should he have birdied number 2? Yes, but then he holds out on number 4, so that gets canceled out for sure. But I just think without that birdie, birdie, birdie close, you mentioned the fact that, like, he didn't do anything spectacular in the final round other than that hole out, where it was just he played his game. He just played really well, and because of how well he was playing, it was just pretty much a given that he was going to make a ton of birdies, no bogeys, and just continue to climb the leaderboard. If he doesn't make those 3 closing birdies in the Saturday round, it feels like he has to force something. It feels like he has to do something historically good, and I don't think he ever gets there in the same way. So I thought he really not necessarily won it down the stretch on Saturday, but he went from somebody who pretty much had to be ruled out to, hey, wait a minute. All he has to do is start somewhat good, and the guys at the top are going to feel the pressure of, oh, shit, Scottie Scheffler's the one tracking me down now.
And, man, I think the only reason that he's not getting more attention about how good he really is he just doesn't have that personality, the star personality. He doesn't say dumb shit like Wyndham Clark does, which, just draws more attention to Wyndham Clark. Like, listen to Scottie Scheffler's interviews. They're awesome as a person. Like, if you want to be a good person in life, he says, if I win on Mondays, I get a few extra texts. We celebrate, but my life isn't different. Like, I'm not changing. I'm just going to go be with my family. I'm going to go continue to just be me. I mean, that's somebody that he says it in such a sincere way. He's not just saying that. Like, that's how he lives his life. So I hate that people are like, oh, he doesn't have the star power. Let's just appreciate him for who he is and how he plays golf. And he doesn't have to be the fist pumping Tiger Woods and all that. It's just a different great player that, maybe we need to take a little bit more notice of the good guys instead of the bad guys.
Not only that, but I think whether you're a good golfer, a beginning golfer, somebody, a former pro golfer, whoever, you can learn a lot and become a better golfer from listening to Scottie in those interviews. Just how grounded he is throughout the entire round, before the round, after the round, everything. He takes so much pressure off of himself without trying to take pressure off of himself because of his approach to the game.
Yeah, and I mean, where does it stop? I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be. I mean, you want the field or Scheffler at Augusta? Like, I don't know what side of that I really want. I mean, he's just an incredible talent, and I think he just, I tell my kids all the time, enjoy the process, not the results. So the process of grinding. When you have a 5-footer that means something, when you have to throw out the first pitch for your state championship baseball game, whatever it is, enjoy the process of doing it. And I think that's where Scheffler really has everybody beat, is he truly enjoys the process and the grind of what he's doing.
I think that also is why we don't necessarily notice as often as maybe you would expect us to, but also why he doesn't really feel the pressure of the fact that he only has one major victory at this point. Could be a very different story in 5 months, but we'll see. And I think that I would definitely take the field side of it, but I'd also definitely take Scottie to win at least one major this year.
Yeah, and that was just kind of a proven point. I mean, I don't like. It'll be fun to see some of the live guys back and all that. He's just an incredible, and I love that he kind of just does it his way. Like, it's a testament to his teacher in Dallas. There, like the same guy taught him and Justin Leonard. I talked about two very different golf swings.
I've got one final question for you before we jump into the course fit for the Valspar Championship and a bunch of both DFS and betting picks for the Valspar. And that is, you just mentioned live. One thing that stood out to me about the Players Championship and about TP Sawgrass in particular is that the closing stretch of Sawgrass is phenomenal. And the golf course as a whole plays with a very specific cadence to the course where you start with some of the easier holes. You're warmed up into the round. You get to a brutal stretch of par fours. Then you get to the extreme variance, the scoring holes, but also the holes that you can make a quad on with 16 and 17. On live with the shotgun start, like imagine if Scottie's third round didn't finish on 16, 17, 18, but instead finished on number 3 or number 4. How much do you think the shotgun aspect takes away from the drama of the golf course because of the way that golf courses are designed? They're meant to be finished on those closing holes and starting on the starting holes.
So people are I'm really glad you brought this up because there's a few rants that I like to get into, and this was one of them. People are trying to make this a case for shotgun starts. And I don't even how's that real?
I saw the tweet you're referring to. It was something like Scottie being in the practice area when he won instead of being on the third hole. What was him being on the third hole instead of closing on 16, 17, 18 better?
So I will say this. So this is my point. Pete Dye is an unbelievable, and he designs a lot of his golf courses the same way. We have a great course in North Texas called Stonebridge Dye. Kind of does the same thing. Kind of eases you into the round, then you play really hard holes, and then gives you a couple of chances, and then gives you a bunch of risk reward. It does an incredible job of working on, how the golf course goes together. A lot of people refer to it as the cadence of the golf course. Yeah. Right. And I agree with that. I think there's some golf courses that the lay of the land, there might be a better finishing holes than 16, 17, 18. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that this applies to every golf course. You cannot you cannot play this golf course in a shotgun start. It's a ridiculous comment.
And it's not just, I think it's important to note, it's not just the aspect of losing some drama by finishing on number 2 and number 3 instead of 16, 17, 18, but there's also a strategy element to it. If you had Scottie play that 17th hole over and over and over again, he might never hit the shot that Xander and Wyndham hit. At least he wouldn't have done it purposely because he knew his job on that hole was to make par. Xander and Wyndham get to that hole. They have a clear job. They need to make birdie, so they have to attack that pin. That's such a key part of the stretch run of any golf tournament. And you totally lose that if they're playing those holes as their fourth last hole instead of second last hole.
And let's just compare it to Augusta, right? It's another mainstay. 18 is not even close to what would be the best finishing hole in that golf course. Like, it's just not. It doesn't have the elements of, is it a good golf hole? Yes. I'm not saying it's a bad golf hole, but it feels like a number 5 to me, not a number 18 with all the elements. So, there are certain, like, that golf course, talking about Sawgrass, does a really good job of, like, 18 is the hardest hole on the golf course, but you saw a shit ton of threes. It's not like there were 0 threes there that it was impossible. I don't know. It's frustrating. These people are just idiots.
No argument there. Let's jump into course fit for the Valspar. Man, we've had such an incredible run of strong course fit models, and it continues this week. We have a slight emphasis on both aspects of driving, 1% increase on driving distance, 10% increase on driving accuracy, small decrease on approach play, only 6%. So when we say like approach play is 6% less predictive than it usually is, still means it's really important. Then a 20 percentage point increase on short games, a 45 percentage point decrease on putting. That's, I think, maybe the most interesting part of this course fit model. So in summary, you got to drive the ball well. Got to be good pretty much all around tee to green, but slight emphasis on accuracy off the tee and around the green play. And then you can survive kind of a balky putter. So I like that aspect of it as well. When I mention all of that, do any of the names really pop out to you?
Well, so this is a unique place, and I think we're going to get some elements this week. So I think Friday on we're going to get some wind. It's going to be a little bit more difficult. I think these greens are pretty hard to read. That's why you see such a decrease in putting. Yep. I saw some stat where it's maybe the least feet of putts made in any golf tournament last year, which is a pretty incredible stat.
I think, by the way, I think that's in part because it's difficult to make putts, but I think it's also because it's difficult to hit greens. So you're getting fewer opportunities from that 15 to 20 foot range, and you're more, you're well outside of the hole, or you're chipping it somewhat close, and now you have to make a 6-footer.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the usual suspects I think are going to play good here. I think, like my initial thought is let's lean to these guys that maybe had the weekend off at TPC that have star talent. With the Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth type. So immediate for this place, those are the guys that I think I'm going to kind of go, especially with the wind being up. That's the people that I feel like are the best fit here. You can make a big argument for Keegan Bradley this week, in my opinion. Yep. Especially coming off, would you call it maybe his poorest putting performance? I mean, this is by the eye test. Everybody's got to remember, I'm not like Alex is the one looking at stats. I'm just going by what I saw. He struggled last week, and coming to a place like this where he knows it's hard to hold putts anyway, and it kind of evens him out. I like a guy like Keegan Bradley this week.
I feel like his caddy really jinxed him. Maybe a month or so ago, we talked about the fact that his caddy said, his putting used to be a weakness. Now it's his strength. Well, since then, he's lost at the Farmers Insurance. He's lost over a stroke and a half at the Genesis. Now he just lost 3.5 per round in just 2 rounds at the Players Championship. So yeah, it definitely was his worst putting performance in a long time. But I'm a little bit concerned because we started to see signs of the struggles coming back to his putter before this. He also, by the way, had his worst short game performances. Just around the green game, he lost strokes for the first time since the century to kick off the season as well. So I think the saving grace for Keegan is that he's one of the most volatile players on tour, event to event. It's why he so often pops in our outright model. And when you are that volatile from one event to the next, it's a little bit easier to forgive a really bad performance because we know that volatility means he can just as easily get his A game back this coming week. So definitely interested in him in the outright model. I will definitely be interested in him in DFS if he's low owned. So many guys like that this week where I don't have the greatest sense of where ownership will be at this week and whether or not I like a player this week. Like there are so many of them that it's going to be the ownership could be right on the edge where it's like, oh, if it was a little bit lower, I'd love to play him. If it was a little higher, I'd have an easier time fading him. But Keegan's one of those guys. I think Doug Gim is one of those guys where he's third in our expected strokes gain model. Low volatility guy, so not popping in the outrights. Like even though he's third in expected strokes gained, we don't have him winning very often, only a 2% chance. Man, I'm worried he's going to be really popular, in which case I might have to fade. So lots of those guys this week.
Yeah, I mean, we have a big opportunity for another one of those. Do you want to stack a lineup with maybe Spieth and JT in it, and then you've got enough of the low salary guys? I think that Bud Cauley has a really good week this week. I think he's recovering from injury. He's from the South, played at Alabama. He was a rising star, battled a bunch of injuries, has shown some signs back to form. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him contend again. He's working really hard. He's doing a lot of the right things. And just watching him on the golf course and just seeing the way that he's carrying himself, I know there's probably a lot of people that listen that have no idea who he is. I think that he's somebody to kind of keep your eye on this week. We kind of talk about this a lot of guys that I just have been around enough and watched them play enough, and maybe they haven't quite popped yet. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him be one of those guys this week.
Yeah, I like that call. Another guy who's very similar in their strokes game profiles, short off the tee, but very accurate off the tee, strong iron play, strong short game, is Lucas Glover. No surprise, we're going to go right back to him. He cost us the 6 for 6 at the Players Championship in our DFS lineups, but you know what? Sometimes you have to forgive, and sometimes you have to realize that even though he missed the cut, he did play pretty solid golf. Like his Thursday was one of his worst rounds of the year. Bounces back with a 3-under, gained off the tee, gained approach again. It was his first week losing strokes around the green of the entire season. So we had mentioned like what an improvement his short game had made. It didn't hold up this week, although sometimes there's a little bit of a misleading aspect to that, like especially at a course like Sawgrass, where being short-sighted can so often just be death, that maybe it was actually that his approach play wasn't quite as good as the numbers suggest, and he was missing in incorrect places. Regardless, he's been so solid that I'm very much okay coming back to him here. Now he's one of the better players in the field too, whereas last week, he was worthy of that low price tag, only $7,300 in DraftKings, and really strong in the betting markets as well. We got him at 70-1 with an each way over at Bet365. I mentioned in our Discord that I like him as just a pure outright as long as you can get 60-1 or better. We actually have him at 3.3% to win. So tons and tons of value on Glover. And that's in large part because his event-to-event standard deviation is also high. We haven't seen that as much this season, where his event-to-event standard deviation has been pretty consistent. But that's because we haven't seen the putter spike yet. We know that it can. We saw it a year ago. As soon as that happens, if it does happen to happen when his ball striking is there, there's no reason why he can't contend, and no one's giving him the respect to be able to do so. Which is kind of surprising given how recent it was that, people called him one of the best golfers in the world for a 2-week stretch at the end of last year. Something that we were laughing about on Twitter, like people always overreacting to small stretches of great play, but it can also help us several months later find some real value both in the betting market and on DraftKings.
Glover was one of my first clicks on DraftKings this week for his price tag, and I had him in my 200 single that Min cashed, and he was my only miscut. It was a little bit frustrating, but he didn't miss the cut by much. He played, like you said, played good the second day, and just the little bit they showed of him and what I've watched of him, he doesn't look far off to me, if that makes sense.
Yep.
The only other guy that I think that I don't have in my lineup right now, but if some of our listeners are looking for a kind of a really low price guy is Echevarria. He shot a couple of 72s or 73s to barely miss the cut at the Players. Really good form before that. I know he plays well in the wind. He's young, and he's like in the fives, like mid fives price tag. So if you really want to go stars and scrubs, I think that he's a good look down there as well.
The
I think
6K range has a lot of interesting options too. Like from 65 and below, I can rattle off a number of names who project well in our expected strokes gain: Neesmith, Silverman, Kyung-Hyun Lee, Cauley, McIntyre, Grayson Sig, Dylan Wu, Joseph Bramlett, Johnny Vegas, Hayden Springer. It's a pretty long list. So my MME pool will probably have a number of these guys and just try and mix and match at the top.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up Naismith. He got some airtime, and they talked a lot about how good he hits it. And then they talked about a great concept that I don't think we talk about enough as former players, is when you hit it that good and get that many chances, people are like, oh, he just doesn't putt very good. Well, when you hit it 10 to 20 feet every single hole, yes, that is the way it looks, but it maybe not be the case, because the percentage of he's not hitting it so close that he's missing short ones. He's just getting a ton of 15 to 20 footers. So I think that I'm not surprised he projects well, and I wouldn't be surprised if he plays well. He's somebody that I also think long-term we'll be talking about a lot more.
And to your point, we actually have him at plus 0.05 strokes gained per round putting as our projection in this field. So with you there, I had a lot of him in MME last week, and it did quite well, but I didn't have the right combination. So MME wasn't the best week, or at least wasn't a huge winning week. Let's go to the top of the board. What are your thoughts on Schauffele versus Burns versus JT? And you can also throw Spieth in there if you'd like.
Yeah, I think that it's going to come down with Schauffele. I think he's clear-cut the best player at the top of the board right now. I know Burns played really good in the third round. I watched it. There was a couple of good shots in there. I mean, great shots in there, really. But it wasn't I wasn't overly impressed for how that'll translate to this week. Also, you're kind of taking what he does best, and it's, and that's putting, and putting is the least, so-called the least important here, right? We all know how important it really is. But, I think that he's going to have the highest ownership. That, once again, this is me without looking at numbers. I think I will steer clear from Burns. I'm either going to go down to JT and Spieth or go all the way up to Xander there. I don't, and I'll be interested to know your take as a golfer. How does he recover from not winning last week and being in contention? Because we all know, no matter how good it is, it still is hard on you mentally.
Yeah, it's a good question. And this is another instance where I think that ownership just matters so much, and we can't possibly have a discussion about like who our preference is on DraftKings without mentioning the fact that ownership can change our preferences. My hope is that people lean into the course history for JT and Sam Burns and make them more popular. Maybe they lean into the idea that, Xander's going to be so mentally exhausted from not getting that win, because we do have Xander head and shoulders above everybody else. We have him at 1.92 expected strokes gained for this field, pretty much a full stroke above both Burns and JT. We've got him at 12% to win, 35% for a top five, only a 14% chance of a miscut. By far, he has the best distribution of potential outcomes. So I would love to be able to play him at moderate ownership. Maybe the field gets around to just how much better he is than everybody else, and they are okay skipping the course history juggernauts, if you will, in Burns and JT. It's just gonna depend on ownership. But if Schauffele is close to that number that I would be a little bit uncomfortable with, let's say he's 35 to 40% projected in single entries, that's when I would start to consider going down. And I might just still skip Burns and JT. Spieth, somewhat interesting, especially because his event-to-event volatility makes him project pretty much as well as Burns and JT for us when you look at win odds, when you look at top five odds, things of that nature. But I could also see myself making this one of the weeks where I'm more balanced, loading up on guys like Minwoo Lee, Keith Mitchell, Aaron Rai, Doug Gim, those types. So for the first time in a while, I feel like the entire spectrum of lineup construction types are at play for me.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I just think that I like so many guys at the bottom that I'm going to be able to get to more guys at the top, right? So it's not
Yeah.
that I don't like those guys in the middle, but I mean, if you're trying to, or in my eyes, I'm trying to win, the 200 single. I'm not trying to min cash it. So you're going to have the winner, or most likely have the winner to do that.
Mhm.
I say that I won it without the winner before, so it's not impossible. But
Speaking of having the winner, this is where we had Taylor Moore a year ago. We had him pre-tournament and we got him live. So it's one of our best betting weeks all time on the show. Where are your thoughts on Taylor Moore this year?
I mean, I think you kind of called it last week, right? Talking about he's just not driving it as straight as he did last year,
Yeah.
which is surprising because he's one of the guys in the field that I've played golf with. I've seen him, and his ball just doesn't curve; he just hits it down the middle. So I don't know what's going on there, and I don't know. This is where you'd love to have somebody on the grounds be like a caddy or whatever, being like, hey, he's going back to his old driver, or hey, he's switching shafts, or maybe that's the problem. Maybe he is changing stuff every week, or with the new equipment. And I know a lot of these guys, part of their contract is they have to play whatever the latest and greatest golf club is. So sometimes it just may not be the same as last year's model or whatever. And also, like anybody that's ever been fit for a golf club, swinging it with a TrackMan behind you and then getting under the gun and hitting it on the golf course can be two totally different things as well. So, I wouldn't be surprised to see him contend or play good. I mean, if he figures out the driver, we obviously know this place is good for him. So, yeah, like if you get him super low owned, it'd be hard to not play him, right? I mean, he definitely I don't think he cares about defending here. Like the way he's playing right now, and he's just trying to figure out and play good again. I don't think he cares that he's the defending champion.
Yeah, and maybe it gives him a little bit more confidence. But one of the common themes that we've kind of backed on the show is the idea that course fit is just so much more important than course history. And course history is basically only as important as much as it reflects course fit. And part of the way that I think that can be intuitive for people is realizing that a golfer is not the same player than he was a year ago, or than he was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, things of that nature. We had a perfect example last week with Sahith Theegala, where historically Theegala has been a severely inaccurate player off the tee. We get to, of course, in Sawgrass that driving accuracy was 98% more predictive than usual, at least by our driving accuracy metric. This year, he's driving the ball more accurately. So we said, to hell with his course history, play him at the Players. He comes through for us with the top 10. Honestly, it could have been a lot better than that. He had one really bad swing off the tee on number 9 in the final round. Without that swing, maybe he makes a charge and is there down the stretch. Regardless, you can see how when a player's game evolves or degenerates, he can just be a much better or a much worse course fit for a specific golf course than he was previously. We have a little bit of that this week with Taylor Moore, as you mentioned. Last year at this time, we loved him because he was driving the ball so well. He was like another version of Keith Mitchell, where he was longer than most of the field and more accurate than most of the field. It was going to give him a pretty big advantage. The other change in his game, and this maybe is less important because of how less predictive putting is this week than most. Last year, his putting was unbelievable at this time. It wasn't just that he was making long putts. It was like he was automatic from 6 feet. He was automatic from 8 feet. Week in and week out, he was gaining a full stroke per round or more on the greens. This year, he's had some struggles around the green, so definitely not the same player, but there are some good signs too. His approach play has been quite good. His short game seems to be coming back around, and he has had 2 of his better off the tee events in each of the last 2 at Bay Hill and at Sawgrass. So there are signs. So like you said, if he's low owned, I think it'll be very easy to back him. And boy, would I love to be able to root for him again. But if he's popular because he's the defending championship or the defending champion, then he's probably going to be a fade for me. It's going to be a tough decision either way, I think.
So, and I want to go back to Theegala a little bit here. he comes up a lot on our show, right? We talk about him a lot. And it's kind of the same reason that you guys like Siwoo Kim comes up a lot, which after an incredible Sunday, I think he finished 6th as well. These guys, their talent tee to green is very elite. When their best is not far behind the best in the world. So they just don't do it as much, right? It just doesn't happen as much. But it obviously both really good players and are making a ton of money. And just pump out these top 10. So that's why we talk about these guys. Just it falls into the stats side, but it also falls into the eye test of they can hit the shots that we talk about that, the middle down guys on tour just can't hit. They just, and it's pretty noticeable difference. Theegala is going to win a lot. He has the right personality. He has the right, and he can, when he plays really good, he's a very elite.
Yeah. I think the only thing that he has to eliminate right now is the big miss, because he's become so much more accurate where he's hitting a much higher percentage of quality golf shots. And it's just when the miss happens, it's often too penalizing, which also could just be random. So I'm with you. I think he's going to win a ton. He just kind of has to build that momentum.
Yeah, and it's coming. I mean, there'll be a time that he wins again this year. So after our obviously back in the game win last week with Scheffler, we've kind of hinted around going back to, hey, let's just maybe play the best player in the field by model. I don't think that I can get behind playing Schauffele in a non-elevated event, though.
I don't think we have him anymore, and I'd be with you regardless. This to me feels like a week where we can take a chance. Like, we have taken a very aggressive approach so far, where we have used a lot of the better players early, knowing we get them low owned because people want to save them. So if we're gonna make it through the entire season playing really high quality players, we have to take some shots on guys lower down the board. I think we've got some opportunities to do that this week. Maybe it's Doug Gim, maybe it's Keith Mitchell, or even like a Lucas Glover, someone like that. I think we've got a lot of options this week.
Yeah, I think that we need to kind of ride the momentum of finding a guy to win. I'm not like, I agree. Like, I'm good with passing on Burns this week. Like, I'm good with not playing him. I definitely have thought about the Thomas Spieth comparison of, they play good here, they both miss the cut. Do we want to get somebody like that involved? Yeah, it's a very interesting week to me in one and done, because I just think that those top 5 or so are I just have so much win equity up there that it's hard to get away from them. That being said, like, there's other guys in the field that, I mean, Sung J M, right? He goes so overlooked for a place like this that I just think he could win here, and we wouldn't be surprised. I know, like, I'd like to see him in a little bit better form, but we talk a lot about being ahead of the curve, and is that form coming?
When you said top 5, do you want to rattle off those top 5 names?
Well, Xander, Thomas, Burns, Spieth. And then the top 4, but I would throw, Harman and Cam Young into the high win equity guys.
I was hoping you would say Harman, because I think he's my number one choice. We've got him second in win odds, 6%. I don't think we're going to get him in better form at all this season. Coming in, he gained 1.75 strokes per round with his approach at the API, then 2.5 strokes per round at the Players' Championship with just his approach play alone. That's unbelievably good. He gained 4.6 strokes per round total at the Players. That wins, I would say, 99% of tournaments, including like probably 95% of major championships or Players' Championships. What Scottie did, what Wyndham, Xander, and Harman all did, was just unbelievable golf.
Yeah, I just worry about he hasn't played very well here, and I think that has something to do with being a lefty and the eye lines and stuff like that. And you kind of know what I'm talking about. Some other people might not understand that, but just visually, the way the golf course looks to him, it's not so much like people will be like, well, the way he curves it, obviously he can play well here. That doesn't matter. But sometimes it's a visual effect more than it is an actual like course effect, if that makes sense. I agree. Like, I love the way he's playing, and everybody just seems to overlook him all the time, which is odd. The reason I said him is I mean, he's got back-to-back good showings. I think really quiet top 20 last time out. I mean, I don't know. I think Harman might appeal more to the masses. I just wanted to kind of go maybe somewhere a little bit different. And I think he competes at a lot of really big events this year.
It's possible. What makes you say he has bad history here? Because he missed the cut last year, but he did gain over a stroke per round off the tee, and he finished 5th in 2022.
Didn't he struggle a while before that too? I thought that this is one of the places he hasn't played very well.
I'm not sure what he did before that, but I would again refer to the idea that I don't really care what he did prior to that. I don't even care what he did the last 2 years. Like, I just care about what his fit is. But he was a much different golfer before. Like, his iron play has improved so much from where it used to be. He's more accurate off the tee now. He's a different golfer.
I think he fits that bill, and you talk about that a lot. Is he's just not the same player that he was in the past, which I do agree that you can go back to. But he is 1 for 6 here since 2015. So being that 5th place finish, so yes, I can get behind. Obviously, not the same player, especially that he was. Let's call it 3 years ago. He's one of the people that has made huge strides. I think I'm not a huge course history guy, but I do think there is something about visually the way a golf course looks.
So if we can narrow it down to 4 guys, Harman for me would be 1, and then I think Doug Gim would be number 2 for me. Who are your top 2?
I think mine would be Spieth and M. I think that especially if we can get high volatility Spieth with very low owned.
Do we have Spieth? I feel like we may have used Spieth. Let me check.
I thought we had Spieth and JT, but I could be wrong.
Let's see here. We do not have Xander. We have Harman. We do not have Spieth. We used him at the Phoenix Open.
Dang, I thought we went a different, but yeah, I guess we did.
We do have JT. I feel like JT has been the most used. Only 49% of the league still has him.
Gotcha. I just not sure if I'm ready to get behind him yet, especially because I think that he'll be maybe the most popular here. So I would probably lean to back to Harman then, especially if you think that he's just that much better now than he ever has been, which I can't argue with. I could also get behind Gim. I think the Gim to me comes back to the volatility, right? And he just doesn't have. I'm just not sure he has the win equity. I could be wrong. It just.
I think I agree with that, and I'd also say I'm not sure he has the mentality to win just yet. Where I don't know if this makes any sense, and this is admittedly uncharacteristic for me. Do you remember when he made the putt on the 16th at TPC Scottsdale and had that huge fist pump?
Yeah.
It seems to me like he's almost like too surprised when he does something really good under pressure, that if you put him in the position where he needs to come through to get the win, I'm not sure he's going to do it. We also saw like a similar fist pump on the 17th when he chipped in this past week. It seems like he's so surprised to be playing as well as he is that if you put him under the most pressure where he has to get it done to get an actual victory, I'm just not sure he does. And that might be unfair because he's playing extremely well. And by the way, he's doing it in every aspect of golf. He's driving it accurately. His approach play has been great. His short game is much improved, and he's making putts.
I 1,000,000% agree with the mindset deal here. If you belong at the top of the leaderboard, you don't act like that when you chip in on 17, right? I understand that's a huge moment and a huge place, and it's a good place to get excited. I want that kind of reaction if you chip in there to tie for the lead or get within 1 to give yourself a chance on 18, not the situation that he's in. And that's the competitive, like, if you feel like you're supposed to be at the top of the leaderboard, you're gonna keep going and try to get further up the leaderboard. You're not going to be content at 8th or 10th. So I think that maybe he'll get there, and maybe that's going to come, especially if he continues to play this well. But I want to see him in that as the leader and not the chaser.
To play devil's advocate to myself, where I would counter that is, maybe he's just enjoying the moment and having a really good time out there, which is a positive. Like being able to have fun and enjoy this stretch and not just feel the pressure is a positive. And we also can't really fault him. Like he comes back, miscut, then T13 at the Farmers Insurance, then T12 at Scottsdale, 8th in Mexico, 16th at PGA National, and then 16th again at the Players Championship. I think the more important hesitation with Gim is that his best performance in this phenomenally solid stretch has been 2.3 strokes gained per round, which is not going to win a golf tournament. Because he hasn't done better than that doesn't mean he can't, but we haven't yet seen a ceiling from him that says this guy can win in a field like this.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather play Cam Young than him, because I think if you get Cam Young's A game here, Cam Young's going to win. And that's just all there is to it. We've seen that upside from him. Even Keegan Bradley. I mean, I don't want to. That's not who I want to use, but he's proven that he can win. I mean, if you play Doug Gim here, you're basically saying, "Hey, I'm satisfied with an 8th place finish."
To your point, we have Keegan projected about half a stroke behind Doug Gim in our expected strokes gain numbers, and yet we also have Keegan with a much higher percentage chance to win. So I think we seem to be in agreement here. Maybe we're leaning Harma. We'll talk through more of it, and we'll put it in the Discord once we make our final decision. The last thing I'll say there is, just because I'm not so sold on Gim as a one-and-done play doesn't mean that I'm not excited to play him in DFS if his ownership isn't through the roof. Any final thoughts before we jump out of here?
No, I once again, like I said last week before we got off the show, I hope they let the greens firm up and the wind play. Let's play a real golf course this week. And I'm kind of excited about a non-Scottie golf tournament, right? I think we're going to we'll get to, I do think the tour did a better job of showing more golf shots, but it was still the same 3 groups. Like we didn't see, I mean, did we see any Siwoo Kim live shots? They were all replays.
They were all replays. Yeah. That was a bummer because, man, he played so incredibly well.
And even a guy like, I was kind of following Taylor Montgomery a little bit, and he hits it in the water on 17 and then comes back and birdies 18 and hits really good shots. And I hope they get that right. But yeah, let's show more golf shots, but show more players that are all playing really good. And they're on the right track, but let's play a real golf course with good coverage and no Scottie Scheffler to worry about.
Ownership will be up probably early this afternoon, maybe this evening. With it will come the GPP scores. So we will dive into all of that in just a bit. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.